Welcome back to the Green Garden Guys channel. Well, as most of you know, Halloween is almost upon us. And folks who've watched the channel for a few years, you might remember back in 2018 how I decided on Halloween to go through a whole bunch of my weird stories and ghost stories and all this strange stuff. It's been part of my rather unusual long strange trip in life. Last year I didn't feel much like it. I had requests from people who enjoyed it, even though it was really a departure from gardening, talking about ghosts. But I wasn't into it last year. Actually, the truth is, I'm really not into it for some reason this year either. But this Halloween promises to be one of the most unusual, best, worst, most creative, I don't know, different Halloween that we have ever seen. So, since I happen to like Halloween, there's only a handful of holidays that we have in this country that I really do get a kick out of, and Halloween's one of them. I like 4th of July too, because I love blowing stuff up. But Halloween was a good one, free candy, hey, scaring people, whoa, celebrating the spooks of the dead. Let's go visit a graveyard. It's exciting, yeah. And Halloween, though, too, just like so many of our other holidays, anytime we seem to have gotten a holiday that would be connected to Christian religions, like Christmas or Easter or Halloween, we find these weird, strange amalgams of things that are like pagan and Celtic with things that are like Catholic, and wow. Halloween's no exception. Like for instance, Easter, we celebrate resurrection of Christ, but the word Easter is derived from the Latin word estrus, which of course estrogen comes from. And she was in charge of fertility and things. And so if you ever wondered, why does Easter have a connection to bunnies and eggs? That's why. Okay, because it's a thinly veiled pagan ritual tradition covered over with wallpaper of Christianity to try to make it, current, acceptable. Christmas, no exception, really. We get the story of the birth of Christ, although I think a lot of theologians claim the guy was probably born in July. But that's the story, and, actually, it was, at one time, I believe, more of a pagan ritual for the return of the light. The days were getting longer again, and the darkness was gone. And Halloween would have been the reverse, although it wouldn't been called Halloween. I think Halloween was derived from the All Hallows Eve, Halloween, where the Catholic Church had tried to cover up some of the previous Celtic pagan traditions that were going on. Anyway, I had thought maybe I was going to talk about the history of Halloween and how it comes about and all that, although there's plenty of people out there that have done really good work on that one. And after researching it, I said, it doesn't look like anybody really knows. Not really. This holiday is such an amalgam of things that were piled together that came from the old world, the new world, things that are ancient, things that are modern, and it's still changing. Halloween is changing again today, But the thing I liked about Halloween, frankly, always was the darkness. Life is full of mystery. None of us really know what's going on here. And, of course, death, which Halloween is always associated with graveyards, ghosts, things like this. It's associated with death and spooks, spirits, and ghosts. And it would be an interesting study, I think, to find out, how many people out there actually, believe in ghosts. I suspect worldwide, and probably U.S., there's a fair percentage. I thought I was going to look that one up, but I didn't. So I didn't do a statistical on that. my figure is that nobody really believes in a ghost until you meet one. Yeah, when you meet a ghost, you believe in ghosts. If you haven't met a ghost, you don't believe in ghosts. I mean, it's improbable, right? Yeah, totally. Non-corporeal human personality still wandering the earth, railing chains, and stuff. And so I don't know whether, people who have had the experience of being with ghosts, whether they are blessed or whether they're cursed. In other words, is that a good experience to have in life, or is it, something that, kind of messes with you? I'm kind of neutral on it. I don't have any idea why I have to have those experiences, but I have. This life has led me into some very strange places where I ended up living in houses that were thoroughly haunted. And they were houses that were also observed by other people that lived there. It wasn't just Bill. In fact, the people that moved out when I rented the place warned me, it's haunted. I know it's cheap, but it's haunted. It was. Yeah, I've told this story before. Paint cans rolling on the basement floor, camel bells ringing in the night, camel bells ringing during the middle of parties, all kind of activity. The experience I've had with ghosts leads me to believe that learning how to deal with death right in our society is probably something we're a bit short on. We have some rather odd, I think, personally odd beliefs about death. Most of the planet has similar kind of funeral traditions. A lot of the planet, venerates the past souls, and they often, bury them in graveyards and so on, and try to preserve the bodies. I mean, that definitely goes way back to Egypt. Egypt did such a good job of preserving the bodies. They're still here, And so this idea of keeping the body intact so the soul can re-enter it, or in the Christian beliefs, it's not reincarnation, it's resurrection. That one of these days, you'll be back. It'll be a brand new body, but you'll be back. This idea that there is life after death, quite pervasive. It really is. In studying these beliefs, philosophies myself as a younger man, the only one I ran across that was significantly different when it came to dealing with death were the Tibetans. The Tibetan Buddhists have a totally different belief, absolutely non-Christian, I mean, if you're a Catholic, you believe when Uncle Harry died, and he might be up there looking over us from heaven off a cloud, making sure nothing bad happens, that in other words, our deceased relatives are there to help look over us, guide us, and protect us, is a belief that stems out of Catholicism and sort of pervades all of Christianity in a way. But not in Tibetan Buddhism, man. The Tibetan Book of the Dead that I read as a younger man, I found it an astounding document. Really, what it is about is how to get rid of the spirit of your deceased ancestors. Really, it's a very unusual practice where literally when somebody passes, they'll take all their stuff and throw it out into the street. They'll actually go about a couple of weeks of cursing them and bad-mouthing the deceased. And it's not because they didn't love them, it's just to make sure that the spirit moves on, that the non-corporeal aspect of the human, whatever it is, goes to the light. They don't want it hanging around. And because of the beliefs, Tibet is one of the least haunted places on earth, if you believe that haunts are real. Like I said, those of you who've never had the experience of meeting a ghost, you don't believe this. That's the way it is. You don't hurt my feelings. And, and of course, I'm the kind of guy who, I've gotten flack from other human beings most of my life because of my viewpoints, my ideas, what I do, and so on. I've stopped listening to the rest of you. If you think I care what you think about me and my ideas, you got another thing coming. So I'm not afraid to admit in public that, yeah, I've lived with ghosts. They're real. In my world, ghosts are real. You can tell me I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, but that's only because you've never met one. Yeah. The day you really meet one, you will probably end up being convinced either that or you're going to have to change your underwear. Yeah, take your pick. But it's an unnerving experience. Yeah, so the Tibetans, as I said, are real careful about trying to make sure that the spirit moves on. Of course, the Tibetans are Buddhists. The Tibetans believe in reincarnation. And so they believe, shortly after a person dying, that the person will again show up in some other body. I mean, they'll wander the planet trying to find the Dalai Lama when he dies, And they usually do. Seem to be able to identify what body the Dalai Lama's soul has moved to. How they do that, I don't know. But otherwise you get into American and European Christian type traditions, especially, but this extends into all religions that were based on the same documents. So, forgive me for saying that Judaism and Islam all stem from the same story. If you're Islamic, you just turn green and you're throwing up because you don't want to be allied with Jews or Christians. But sorry, guys, same family tree, same story. It just departs at a point, So, yeah. So those traditions, we have a tendency to venerate the dead. We put flowers out for the dead. We say prayers for the dead. We visit the dead in the graveyards and so on. This connection that we have to over the body of the deceased and the idea of the deceased. Now, in some cases, it becomes almost clingy. I think the Catholics firmly believe that or some of them at least, that the spirits of the deceased are hanging around to watch over us. In Hawaii, the cultural belief in most of Polynesia, as far as I know, is that the spirits of the ancestors hang and watch over and help keep things straight for the spirits of the living. And this is obviously is admirable concept that your grandpa will be looking down over you, and hanging around somewhere, trying to make sure you don't get in trouble. It's okay, but it does trouble me because Hawaii is actually one of the most haunted places on Earth. We got ghosts all over this place, some of them very strong. And I mean, even group ghosts like the night marchers, ancient kings and warriors that still march up and down the Waipio Valley with torches, singing, chanting, long dead, and still here. It's 6 of one and half dozen of another, but I tend to think that the natural human state is that just like you shed your skin cells constantly, your blood cells are constantly being reborn and remade, and so I am no longer the same human being that I was 6 months ago. Most of my cells have been replaced, and so I'm physically not even what I was. And so recycling is the way everything works here. And so the idea that there could be an aspect of a human, an energy that is recyclable and can end up after death back around again in another set of cells, that makes as much sense as anything. It fits the pattern. Everything else works that way. So, I don't know. It's mystery, and people who tell you that they do know, I question, because very few people have ever come back from the dead, and even those of us who have had near death and out-of-body experiences and so on, these are temporary things. They seem to have a pattern, that there's a lot of consistency there, but there's still no way to tell what's actually going on. So my take on how we get a ghost. How do you get a ghost? How does this happen? Because I do not believe it's a natural thing. That is, it's not the best way to die. Yeah, having lived with ghosts, I don't want to be one. It looks like a terrible thing. It's very lonely. It looks like, for some reason, if, as they say, there was a white light and I went for the light, if there is a destination, if there is a place that the deceased human spirit moves to, then that's the objective. This is the appropriate way, the right way to die. That's what most of us do. But not everybody does it. I guess even in death, there's a certain amount of free will. Hard to say, but when it goes wrong and we end up caught here somehow, caught between being physical and being non-corporeal in this universe, it seems to happen either because we didn't know we died, that it was so sudden and so abrupt that when we regained consciousness after having been deceased, we did not realize that we were deceased. You've all, I'm sure, had a dream that was so real and so intense that you thought it was reality, you thought you were awake. I've even had dreams myself where I have actually woken up, but I'm still in the dream. It's called sleepwalking. And the dream was seamless in its transition from what was actually reality and what was sleep or dreams. I never really knew where the change occurred. And it's very possible to be in a state like that. And I do fear that sometimes people pass away and they don't realize it. You can get stuck. I think it happens, people who have so much fear and anxiety about death. I think maybe some people had such horrible lives. They're worried. Maybe they can go to hell, or have to pay. So I think fear may have a lot to do with this. Anxiety overpassing. Some people are afraid they're going to go to hell, Some people don't believe in afterlives. Who knows? It's a question as far as exactly how it happens, but consistently, ghosts I've run across seem to be in two categories. People who probably had really obnoxious existence, or mostly younger people who really just had not embraced the idea that they could even die. They still thought they were immortal, and death then came on so suddenly they never realized it even happened. I figure this is how the ghosts occur. I don't know for sure, but they are there. They are there, and it's one of the things that we tend to do around Halloween is to deal with the dead. Yeah, Halloween is not just about spirits. It's also about monsters, Frankenstein, Dracula. So much of that really was added during the 20th century because of Hollywood. Traditionally, this was really very much more about spirits. Not about monsters. I don't know whether monsters actually exist or not. They've existed in our minds, in our mythology forever. Dragons and whatnot. It's always something creepy out there that we believe in. The Sasquatch, Bigfoot might be a real thing. I don't know. It could just be some poor, lonely, hairy ape guy. It's feasible, I guess. It's not very probable, but there's so many people that claim they've seen him. It may exist. The Loch Ness Monster, it may turn out to be just some giant eel or something, but it appears there's probably something in the loch. So whether it's a monster or not is another story. But as far as spook spirits and ghosts, these things, at least to a portion of us, definitely exist. Within some sects of Christianity, they do. Of course, we're all familiar with movies based on Catholic exorcisms. Here's a case where we're trying to deal with removing non-corporeal entities from somebody else's body. All these stories make Halloween a very exciting and scary time. So, perhaps what I will do this year is I might drag back into the file, look for some of those stories I've done in the past. Maybe we'll fresh them up a little bit and bring a few of them forward, some of the ones that I choose specifically for this purpose before Halloween comes. So if there was anybody waiting to hear one of Bill's ghost stories, he just might pop back up. Aloha. Y'all hang loose, but hey, grip the bedposts if you hear creaking in the night.